said during his campaign and throughout that he believes that people who supported him were mistreated in being charged and convicted of crimes in conjunction with January 6th, the riot at the Capitol 4 years and 2 weeks ago. And so it would be shocking at this point if he did not, or surprising if he did not pardon some of the people involved. I think there are various sort of levels of crime, various levels of violence, and there's what one might call low-hanging fruit, which is people who were convicted but not sentenced to any jail time, or people who were convicted and sentenced to such short jail sentences that they already completed them. There may be about 600 or 700 people that qualify in those two categories. Our colleague Brian Riley reports. So, that maybe that there are phases of pardons from President Trump with regard to the January 6th convicts, and it could be that if it's not an entire blanket pardon, that it's less violent pardon.
John, let's talk economic plans and what we could see happen today on that front when it comes to executive orders. I'm thinking tariffs, and I'm thinking oil. He said he wants to drill on day one. Where do we stand on those promises?
Yeah, I think the expectation is at this point that he is likely to do what he says in terms of unleashing America's fossil fuel potential, and what that will entail is reversing some of the Biden-era policies, restricting acquisition and transport of fossil fuels. You can see opening up greater parts of the United States to oil drilling, and a variety of other actions that can be taken to basically put a pause on the Democrats' climate change efforts to stop some of the drilling for various fossil fuels, and sort of reverse that in the other direction and say let's get as many resources out of the earth.
All right, John, appreciate you helping us out here. Stay tuned. We may come back to you throughout the hour here as we wait for the inauguration.
Talk to you in a little bit. John, let's bring in NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander now. Peter, I believe there he is outside the White House across in Lafayette Square. Peter, a busy day obviously for President-elect Trump and the new administration. Tell us what we've seen so far this morning. We've been showing these live pictures up until now of the church that the family's in right now. What's to come ahead of the swearing-in ceremony?
Well, this is always a historic day in Washington, and certainly this year is no different. I was in the West Wing just moments ago, and in effect, the transition is already underway. All the famous framed photos that line the West Wing have now been removed with Joe Biden's picture, and soon they will add to those frames pictures of the incoming president-elect Donald Trump. You've been watching pictures right there of St. John's Church, where we know Donald Trump and his wife, the president-elect, and his wife, the now former and future First Lady, are attending services. We did see some other tech titans join him there. Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta co-founder, is there alongside Amazon's CEO, owner, Jeff Bezos.
You are living there, and then suddenly it's not all out on the side lawn. I mean, they pack it up.
Staffers now have to move the Bidens out and the Trumps in just 5 hours. A monumental makeover for the 132-room mansion with 6 floors and 35 bathrooms. This, a rare glimpse inside the residence of the Obamas. Now, once again, furniture will be whisked away, walls repainted, and artwork replaced.
What's going on at the residence is truly a master class in organization. As busy as it is and as frenetic as the pace may be, everyone knows what their job is on that morning.
No detail is too small to make the incoming first family comfortable. White House ushers find out their ideal room temperature, favorite snacks, even preferred bath soap. Christopher Emery held that job during the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton administrations. He knows firsthand the pressure of move-in day.
How difficult is it to move in a new first family into the White House on Inauguration Day?
It's absolutely phenomenally difficult.
One crisis in 1993 was barely avoided as the Clintons prepared for their inaugural balls.
There was something that was hard to find, right?
Well, President Clinton came up to me and he said, "Horace, where's my tux?" And I said, "Sir, everything's been put away in your closet. I can't find my tux, and I got an inaugural I got to go to." So it was a mad dash all through the White House trying to find where his tux was.
Thankfully, a housekeeper ended up finding it in another closet. What's plan B?
Well, I didn't have a plan B. I had to find the tux. And I said, he's not my size.
This year's transition unprecedented in modern times because this first family has been here before.
This time I have everything. I have the plans. I could move in. I already packed. I already selected the furniture that needs to go in. So it's very different transition this time, second time around.
Our thanks to Gabe Gutierrez for the report. As for the White House, the incoming First Lady says she does not intend to make many changes to the decorations this time around. All right now, I know it is. I would ask if I could, how much it would cost to have a move like that.
Can you even imagine?
I bet I can't afford it.
The detail of painting walls. It's like,
Incredible.
it's gonna still be not even gonna be dry by the time they get there.
Maybe they bring in speed dryers or something like that. I bet that's someone's job.
Absolutely.
All right now we are waiting for President-elect Trump to make his way to the White House, where he's expected to have a sit down with the Bidens. Told they're going to meet, have tea or maybe coffee. We know the President-elect likes a Diet Coke, before they're going to head over to the Capitol for that swearing-in ceremony.
The official inauguration events are set to begin in a little over an hour, with Mr. Trump expected to take the oath of office right around noon.
NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen is standing by. He's been with us all morning long.
John, great to have you back. Walk us through what we can expect from this meeting between the Bidens and the Trumps. It's interesting because this happened right with the Trumps and the Obamas. We saw Melania Trump, before becoming First Lady, pass off a gift, a big Tiffany bag to First Lady Michelle Obama. This meeting did not happen between the Bidens and the Trumps last time around. The Trumps did not facilitate this. They didn't invite them. What do you think is going to happen today?
Well, they're 1-1 against each other. An even match over the course of 2 elections, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I think they are, signaling from both sides that they believe that there should be a modicum of civility. We did not see that after the last presidential election. What we saw before Joe Biden's inauguration was Donald Trump's supporters sacking the United States Capitol after he held an unusual post-election rally at the foot of the White House and encouraged them to march there. We're not seeing that this time. He won. And so I think both sides are interested in, in projecting some level of, some semblance of decency toward each other. And so, they'll have a cup of tea.
That expression about
maybe
fly.
not actual tea. Maybe to your point that Donald Trump will have Diet
so much
Coke,
tea talk.
Yeah,
Drinks tea instead of coffee.
Guys, I love you. I wouldn't have tea with you.
Exactly.
See, I like tea,
bourbon.
but I guess some things still linger from, back in the 1700s. All right, so fly on the wall, that's certainly an expression that applies. You wish you were a fly on the wall in this situation. Let's talk about what happens after that, the swearing-in ceremony, once Mr. Trump does arrive on Capitol Hill. Walk us through what we expect to see there, John.
I think, look, a lot of it's going to be sort of people watching, right? You're going to have the cameras in there, so you'll take a look for the oligarchs, so to speak, the richest folks in the world, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and others. You're going to have, obviously, an inaugural address by President Trump. And you're going to see some performances today. Carrie Underwood, Nelly, Kid Rock, the Village People. I think I'm missing somebody, but some musical performances. And then later in the day, you're going to see President Trump sign executive orders. There's a sort of rally going on for him, or a watch party going on for him at Capital One Arena, not far from the White House. He's expected to sign some of the executive orders there. Why is he expected to do that? Because he said he'd do it yesterday. And by the way, people were watching the Bidens receiving at the White House, ready to receive their friends for tea.
Exactly. A key moment here, John, is President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden are waiting to greet the President-elect and the soon-to-be First Lady.
Exactly who is stepping out of the car right now. Again, Mr. Trump has been at the bottom of those stairs, as has Melania, walking up those stairs at the same moment. Let's listen in.
John, after what we've seen in American politics over the last 10 years, you see that image there. What goes through your mind?
Well, it's better than it could be. I don't know. It didn't appear particularly warm, but at least they're meeting. First Lady Melania Trump appeared to smile at Jill Biden, the outgoing First Lady, after the picture. Melania Trump's face very firm and set for the picture itself, but then seemed to warm up afterward. The Joe Biden-Donald Trump relationship has apparently been pretty good since the election. They'd already met at the White House once. Both of them coming out saying that they've had a pleasant conversation. So, look, in a society that's governed by the rule of law and peaceful transfers of power, there should be, at least a little bit of civility between outgoing and incoming administrations, and we're seeing a restoration of that today. Like I said, it's better than not having it.
Let's also talk with our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander. Peter, after this tea, coffee, whatever they consume behind those closed doors, we will see them share a ride together over to the Capitol. Tell us what might happen in those moments and walk us through the transition from the White House to the Capitol, where this is now happening indoors.
Well, to be clear, moments ago, you just witnessed what is one of the most enduring transfer of power rituals, the incoming and outgoing presidents and first ladies together on the North Portico with the cameras positioned there to capture that shot, to demonstrate to the world that democracy endures. The vice president, notably moments earlier before she and her husband greeted the Vance family as the incoming vice president, J.D. Vance, arrived. A reporter shouted a question at the vice president, and she said, "This is democracy in action." So it's certainly the way that this moment is being viewed by the outgoing administration as they pass the torch to those who will succeed them. Notably, this is a tradition, a courtesy that the Bidens shared with the Trumps, but the Trumps did not provide to the Bidens 4 years ago. So it is in many ways the return of a tradition. I think this is going to be an interesting opportunity for some tea, some coffee, perhaps for some polite conversation. We will see how long they are behind closed doors together. Notably, President Biden hosted Donald Trump here only a matter of days after Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris last November for about a 2-hour visit at the White House, which at the time seemed particularly striking that the two would have spent so much time together. It's expected that they will drive together up Pennsylvania Avenue, that short commute, as it were, from the White House to the Capitol for the swearing in. And I think this is going to be, in some ways, a bit of an awkward moment for these two, who obviously shared such tough words about one another. In effect, Joe Biden describing Donald Trump as an existential threat to the country. And only moments ago, the incoming president of the United States, Donald Trump, texted my colleague Kristen Welker saying of the pardons, the preemptive pardons that Joe Biden announced this morning, Donald Trump said they were disgraceful. So he called the guy he's replacing disgraceful only moments ago, and now the two will be sharing a conversation, perhaps some tea and coffee as well. This is a stunning day. It is a beautiful day here in Washington, though no doubt a frigid one, which is why more than 600 attendees will be indoors there, as you can see in the rotunda, that great, beautiful dome above them, in anticipation of a ceremony that's now really only about 2 hours away. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Peter Alexander, not indoors. He is outdoors, braving the conditions for us. Peter, as always, we appreciate you. Jonathan Allen, we appreciate you helping guide us through our coverage this morning. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But stay right here. Our special coverage of the inauguration of the 47th President, Donald J. Trump, continues.
NBC News. The inauguration of Donald J. Trump. Here's Lester Holt and Savannah Guthrie.
Hi again, everybody. Good morning from Washington. This is our live coverage of the inauguration of Donald J. Trump as the 47th President of the United States, his second term in office, making a return to the White House today after a 4-year absence. And as we come on the air, the president-elect just arrived at the White House for the ceremonial tea with the outgoing President Joe Biden. They attended a service this morning, the Trumps did, at St. John's Church in Washington with former and soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump. But in less than 2 hours, President-elect will take the oath of office at the Capitol inside for the second time, and Senator J.D. Vance will be sworn in alongside him as Vice President. This is a day for history.
It is a historic day, in part because today's inauguration will look a lot different than President Biden's 4 years ago. This time, Mr. Trump's swearing-in ceremony will be held indoors in the Capitol Rotunda due to today's extremely frigid weather. It's the first time we've seen the ceremony move inside since Ronald Reagan's second inauguration back in 1985.
That's the view from above. That's the bird's eye view of the rotunda. President-elect Trump returning to power with, as mentioned a moment ago, a new vice president. Today really is Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's day, a day of pomp and circumstance and celebration for them. It is also a day when they plan to hit the ground running. They are eager to put their agenda, Trump calls it his mandate, in place. NBC News has learned this morning that the president-elect already plans to sign at least 50 executive orders and actions today.
A president that will like and has always liked scorecards, in this case having the most executive orders. Any moment now we will see the Trumps and the Bidens leave the White House and make their way to the Capitol for today's big moment. Shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern, the swearing ceremony will begin inside the Capitol around 11:40 a.m. Donald Trump will officially become the President of the United States. He will take the oath of office and deliver his inaugural address around 11:47. That time symbolic as he becomes the nation's 47th president. The theme, strength, unity, and fairness.
As for this afternoon, the new president will participate in a signing ceremony at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. This has been turned into a public viewing site because today's ceremonies and the parade and some of this outdoor event, that has all been moved inside. And we are expecting that the president-elect, then president, will sign some of those executive orders and actions that he's talked about.
A lot of comparisons will go on today. Unlike last time, the pandemic, tonight's inaugural balls are back on to celebrate the big day. We have it all covered, and our team is fanned out across Washington on what looks like a gorgeous day. And in fact, weather-wise is, if you don't mind the temperature. That's another story. Let's bring in, start with Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker and NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson. This is not the first inauguration for either of them. Hallie, let's start with you.
It's the warmest, I'll tell you that. Listen, this is going to be, I think, a historic day for all the reasons that we've talked about, because of the comparisons that you referenced, but also because for President-elect Trump, he is intentionally making this a day where he is flexing his political muscle in a show of force. You talked about those executive orders. He intends to hit the ground running. We are already getting a sense now from our reporting here on what he will do. Key executive orders on immigration that he said he would do, mass deportations, a national emergency. He will attempt to end.
And so they are trying to hew to tradition here. What happens behind closed doors in that little social gathering, that been boxes that have been packed and trucks that have been moving, some of the goods.
I appreciate you allowing
somebody who's been in public service.
A master class in organization, as busy as it is. And
before.
This time I have everything.
I swear.
I believe that there should be a mock receiving at the White House ready to...
Of those states.
Here we go. Yeah, she just doesn't have eyes. Hat, I have big hat. I have big hat. No see my eyes.
He's in the Senate,
That's
narrow majority
in
the House, but with a lot more allies. When he first entered Washington, he was really here to break it. Now, he's got allies in every quarter of the Republican Party. That's not to say there aren't divisions. That's not to say there's not going to be fierce debate over issues like Ukraine and tariffs and taxes. But by and large, he is going to be met with less resistance from within his own party.
To some extent, saying, hey, people like me now.
That's right. He says people like me now, and it applies to his cabinet as well. When he appointed his first cabinet, his first go-around, there were some people who thought they were there to be a check on Donald Trump, the first president, Donald Trump. But now it's very different. He's appointed people who are very loyal to him. The discussion, will there be someone who can stand up to him and say, I disagree? We'll have to see how that unfolds. We know that he likes disagreement. He likes debate. But ultimately, we're seeing a very different Washington. And remember, not just within the Republican Party, but within the business world, the tech world, the billionaire CEOs who we know are already going there as a part of these ceremonies that are unfolding in front of our eyes, from Jeff Bezos to Mark Zuckerberg to Elon Musk, who he has made one of his top advisors.
And all of them previously, at different points in their lives, somewhat openly hostile in some cases to Donald Trump. And now, I mean, in the case of Elon Musk, his new BFF, I mean, those two are essentially inseparable. Elon Musk has a huge influence over the United States government by SpaceX, by Tesla, I mean, by owning X, the social media platform, and that influence has grown exponentially with this friendship with Donald Trump.
And by the way, it's not just the influence that Elon Musk has, it is the business interest that he has in the decision-making of the federal government, which has raised some of these conflict of interest questions, given that Elon Musk and Donald Trump have developed this really close relationship. You saw him even just yesterday at that kind of last big rally before the swearing in. Elon Musk on stage, as he has been so often throughout the course of this campaign, and now obviously this transition. The other piece of this too, he is set to lead this DOGE, Department of Governmental Efficiency, not an actual, governmental agency. They are going to be outside the typical bounds of the federal government, but they will have potentially enormous influence. He wants to cut billions of dollars from the federal budget. That's his mission.
We're looking inside this is the overflow room. We were looking inside the Capitol Rotunda a moment ago. Those are the tickets, these seats to get in this city right now because of the last-minute changes. Today's ceremony was moved inside for the first time in 40 years because of the bitter cold in the forecast. Let's go to Al Roker now for the latest on that, Al.
Well, guys, again, beautiful blue skies, but it's awfully chilly, but it's also winter. It's not so bad. We've got beautiful clear skies. Temperature right about 28 degrees, which isn't that bad. We're looking 29 actually now. Temperatures will drop into the low 20s by later this afternoon. The wind chills will be the big problem. But this isn't the coldest day, as we mentioned. Ronald Reagan had the coldest inaugural. 1985, it was 7 degrees, again, held in the Capitol Rotunda. The warmest, you had to go 4 years earlier. Ronald Reagan, 55 degrees back in 1981. Now, the snowiest was 1909. William Howard Taft, almost 10 inches of snow. I actually remember that. And the rainiest, 1937, FDR, a rain total of about 1.75 inches. So we've had much worse weather. We've had better weather, but all in all, the weather today, gorgeous blue skies, and as long as you bundle up, everything's fine. Guys?
All right, Al, thank you. I want to get over to Craig Melvin. He's made his way to Emancipation Hall at the Capitol. So this is a new venue for this year's inauguration. It's the overflow room for those who don't fit in the rotunda. So, Craig, what's the scene there?
Well, quite frankly, it's a bit of a party right now, Savannah. Good morning to you. As you mentioned, this has become sort of a makeshift overflow area. Of course, the swearing-in is going to happen in the rotunda. About 800 people will fit there. Behind me here at Emancipation Hall, roughly another 1,300, and then you've got about 500 more next to us in a sort of a theater. But again, keep in mind, this was an inauguration where they were expecting some 200,000 people. So at the very last minute, they basically had to call the list. So it's unclear at this point precisely who is here in the overflow area and who is upstairs in the rotunda. We did just see those images a few moments ago of the former speakers of the House. The expectation is those folks and elected members of Congress, most of those folks are going to be in the rotunda. We've gotten some reporting that some of the spouses may be here in the overflow area. But just a few moments ago, when those images of the president-elect, soon-to-be President Donald J. Trump, and those images of him and First Lady Melania Trump, along with the Bidens, when those pictures popped up outside the White House, there was a roar of applause here inside Emancipation Hall. Folks very excited who are here. Again, keep in mind, we've got a lot of folks who paid good money, bought tickets to come to Washington, D.C. with the expectation that they were going to be able to witness history up close. A lot of those folks are going to have to watch on monitors outside. We can tell you here in Emancipation Hall later this afternoon, after the actual swearing in, there is going to be something called First Honors. It is a military ceremony that is akin to a reviewing of the troops. It's going to look like a reviewing of the troops, but it is not. It's called First Honors. We're also expecting that after the president leaves the rotunda, at some point he'll make his way here, and he will address the hundreds of folks who've assembled here in the hall I'm not sure if you can make it out behind me, but there's already a podium in place at the foot of the statue here in anticipation of those remarks from then the 47th President of these United States, Donald J. Trump.
All right, Craig, thanks very much. There will be a lot of viewing of today, but in different places, not only in this city, but certainly around the world. We want to go to Tom Yamas. He's made his way to the Capital One Arena. That's where the indoor inauguration celebration will take place later this afternoon. Tom, set the scene for us.
Hey, Lester, great to be with you. You know, one of the iconic images of any inauguration is the outdoor parade. That's not going to happen this year because of the cold weather. It will happen sort of inside here. This is the Capital One Arena. We understand a parade at some point will roll through here after President-elect Trump has done all of his events inside the rotunda. I want to show you on stage what they have set up on stage because it's kind of interesting. They have a podium right there, which he'll be delivering his speech when he gets here to about 20,000 supporters. And then you can see the presidential seal. Those are seats behind that. We understand the Trump family will be sitting there. And then look at this over here. This is really interesting. There's a desk with a chair and a microphone, and we believe this is where he's going to be signing a lot of those executive orders, anywhere from 50 to 100 executive orders that span a variety of issues, from restructuring government to opening up drilling fields to cracking down on illegal immigration. I want to show you the crowd as well. These people are the diehards. They're people with tickets, but they're also people that waited outside in those freezing conditions to get in here. And I got to tell you, they're going to be here for 10 hours plus before they even get their eyes on the president once he comes in here, because we're not expecting him until later in the day. Lots of music. I'm sure a very long Trump speech as well once he comes out of that the rotunda and gets over here to the rally. So people here excited, waiting on the president. It does have sort of that party atmosphere. Luckily, they're not serving beer, so the people here are going to be here for about 10 hours. They do have concessions, things like that, but they're going to be patient and they're watching. Actually, I'm going to ask my photographer, Ray Farmer, to show up here. They're watching it all live on the Jumbotron. We should show you that. So all the action that our viewers at NBC are seeing, they're actually also seeing here as well, live in real time. When the president-elect got to the White House and met President Biden, the place erupted in cheers. There's been no booing. It's been all sort of very happy and festive, not anything ugly or nasty. So it looks like people are celebrating the incoming president, the 47th president of the United States. Guys, I'm going to send it back over to you.
All right, Tom, thank you. I want to check in with our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, who's with us now. And it's been a momentous morning already with President Biden's, in his final hours in office, issuing a slew of pardons and already controversial.
Yeah, no doubt. And we right now, Savannah, are right in the middle of what is one of the most enduring transfer of power rituals, of course. The greeting on the North Portico, the tea behind closed doors. Just speaking to someone inside the West Wing, I'm told that they are sharing that tea right now in the Blue Room within the residence of the White House here. And then, of course, they will gather together and drive. We can see only a short distance behind me. The Beast, the presidential limousine, has pulled up. It's near the North Portico as well, where it will take, as expected, both President Biden and incoming President Trump together back up to the Capitol. You spoke a little bit about those pardons. This is going to be a conversation that could be interesting at times behind closed doors. They shared about 2 hours together when Joe Biden greeted and hosted Donald Trump here immediately after his defeat of Kamala Harris. But this time, as we've noted, Donald Trump, only moments before arriving to see the president, described these preemptive pardons as disgraceful. Now the two are face-to-face behind closed doors. Among those receiving those pardons today, some of the members of the January 6th committee, including Liz Cheney, who the president himself has blamed for egregious crimes in the past. Donald Trump has done that. Mark Milley, Anthony Fauci, and some of those Capitol Hill and D.C. police who were involved in testifying before that committee. Donald Trump not holding back his frustration, his anger about that, insisting that they have committed crimes and telling our colleague Kristen Welker in the past that they should be jailed. So with that as the early headline of the day, the transfer of power begins in earnest. Again, earlier I was inside the West Wing, and you could already see the movement behind closed doors. The press secretary's office largely cleared out, absent in one of the adjacent offices, a giant stand-up cardboard cutout of Joe Biden. Doubtful that will last very long when the new incoming Trump team arrives today. The photo frames that are hung within the West Wing had photos of Joe Biden last evening. This morning, they are empty. In anticipation, they will be filled with new photos of Donald Trump. It's notable, one interesting change as it relates to those photos In the past, Savannah, as you know, formerly working at the White House, my colleagues Kristen and Hallie know as well, those frames had been black frames. When Donald Trump arrived, he replaced them with gold-plated frames. Those gold-plated frames remain through the Biden years, and it's likely that Donald Trump will keep it that way.
All right. We're starting to see, thank you, Peter, we're starting to see the processional, some of the dignitaries coming into the rotunda, including, as mentioned before, former speakers of the House, Newt Gingrich, John Boehner, Kevin McCarthy. Yep, there he is, spotted. And there will be several current and former leaders and officials who got that coveted hot ticket. And it is hot, at least warm inside the rotunda.
I am good.
Marked difference of what they had probably planned for when we thought it would be out, on, as tradition has it, on the west front of the Capitol.
We saw Mitch McConnell, a former Republican Senate leader, walking by a moment ago as they take the place. You're right. These are the seats that everyone wants, and there are only so many of them. The direct viewing of the inauguration now just a few hours away. Let's bring in our senior White House correspondent, Garrett Hank. He is also on Capitol Hill. Garrett, good morning.
Lester, good morning. And yeah, those seats in the rotunda got a lot hotter Friday afternoon when Donald Trump announced via social media that this entire ceremony, the part of it actually prescribed by the Constitution, would be moving indoors into the rotunda for the first time in 40 years. I'm glad you mentioned Mitch McConnell, because the fact that the now former Republican leader, who's become something of a Trump antagonist ever since January 6th, got one of those seats inside the rotunda is noteworthy. Up here on Capitol Hill and with Hill aides over the last couple days, there's been a scramble to figure out exactly who's going to be where for this ceremony today. They can only fit about 600 people inside the rotunda, another 1,300 or so down in Emancipation Hall where Tom is. But you figure all of the current lawmakers, former lawmakers, their spouses, governors, major donors, even leaders of some of the major industries in this country, including the tech moguls who have kind of surrounded Donald Trump in recent days. The committee that runs the inauguration and Trump's team having to scramble to find places for everyone for these moments here in the Capitol. They've also been reworking some of the choreography a little bit. You're looking now, I think, at the East Front here, where Donald Trump's motorcade will eventually arrive. Crews have been in the Capitol all weekend long, hanging lights in hallways, trying to make sure that every step of his journey through the Capitol and into that rotunda is captured for history. The swearing in itself will take place at 11:47 a.m. That's an important time. The 47 minutes meant to symbolize Trump as the 47th president. And then he's expected to get right to work. He will not wait until he gets to the Capital One Arena to start signing some of those executive orders we've been talking about. He's expected to do some of that work moments after getting sworn in here. Sort of a theme of moving quickly was present throughout his campaign. But his Republican allies up here on Capitol Hill, lawmakers, very aware of the fact that they've got small majorities in both houses. He's going to be a term-limited president, and they're going to have to move very quickly. And that means starting today, before he even leaves this building, and putting his agenda into place if they want to get all the things they've promised actually done.
Well, Garrett, they are moving quite quickly. And by the way, we're watching these arrivals into the Capitol, and we've seen, of course, we just saw Bill and Hillary Clinton. We've seen some of the tech CEOs. Tim Cook of Apple just walked in, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, and his betrothed, Lauren Sanchez. And talk about moving quickly. I want to turn to Hallie Jackson here, because this just was broken by Caroline Leavitt, who's going to be the incoming spokesperson for Trump. With a big change right here. Go ahead, Hallie, I'll let you break that news.
She just confirmed to us, too, that one of the day one executive actions that President-elect Trump will take is renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America and renaming Denali in Alaska, of course, Mount McKinley. Now,
its former name.
Exactly. Remember, former President Obama renamed it in 2015 Denali. There's some question marks and some caveats here. First, on the Gulf of Mexico, international waters, not clear he does have the authority to rename it. On Denali and Mount McKinley, listen, remember, McKinley was an expansionist president, which perhaps fits with some of the things that Donald Trump has said he wants to do when he talks about things like Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Well, if President Obama could change McKinley to Denali, I suppose Trump can say, I could change it back.
Let's check in with the Alaska delegation to see how they feel about it. Senator Lisa Murkowski, for example, who would be opposed, previously had suggested to renaming it. But this is an example of the way that Donald Trump is coming into office looking to flex that muscle, looking to show that he is putting his stamp on government and that he is a force to be reckoned with here.
Yeah, we're seeing, there's Vivek Ramaswamy, who, of course, will be says he's going to run for governor, but until then, going to be part of this government efficiency effort that he was supposed to co-lead with Elon Musk. And we see current and former members of Congress,
Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, Denny and Hoyer. I mean, this is this in Washington. If you're a nerd like all of us,
There is a
table,
bit of
it's
delay from
it's
like
a real who's who.
when I
It's
see
guess
the
it's-
chat
some people feel
on
at
the
the Academy
screen,
Awards
like
are
right
Oscars, spotting
here.
celebrities, but we start to
And
see them
when,
file
you
in
would
here all
see
under
it,
one roof.
like,
Kristen,
on
another
the screen.
another
So I
executive
might
order
respond to it before
regarding
you
diversity
even see it here, 'cause I
Absolutely. A
can
couple
see
of them.
it here.
The first one that we're told President-elect Trump is going to sign today is going to
But yeah,
make
since
it
people
federal law that there are two sexes, male and female, and will seek to end
No.
federal funding or recognition of gender identities. The second one, targeted DEI initiatives. It aims to end any federal funding for DEI initiatives. Why is this significant? First of all, politically speaking, these
All
are
these
not his
people are
most
walking faster.
popular positions and issues. Americans are sharply divided on this, sharply divided over whether DEI
He would
initiatives
wear-
should
I
be
did
cut,
see
sharply
the long
divided
beard was
over whether the government is striking the right
do not
balance.
like
on
the
DEI.
long beard.
The diversity, equity,
and equity and
I
inclusion.
did see
Thank you,
it.
Savannah. Very good
Where
point.
was
Just as those efforts to make a more equitable workplace, but they've become controversial.
These
and
aren't the issues that necessarily got him elected. It was the economy,
That's
it
right.
was inflation, it
That's
was
right.
immigration.
They were a part of his stump speech, certainly. They were a part of this cultural campaign that he ran, but you're right. His biggest issues were the border and the economy. But these are issues that also help to energize his base. But again, nationally speaking, there are sharp divides around these issues. I think the thing when we zoom out and think about all of these executive orders and executive actions that he's going to be signing today, what we can also anticipate are a series of legal challenges. So he's going to be signing
Yes,
these
there will be
executive
lots of
orders,
legal
and then
challenges.
as soon as that pen dries and the ink dries, maybe even sooner, you can bet that you're going to have some activist group come and challenge them and
There are a
challenge them
lot
in
of
court.
executive orders. Most escape our attention on a day in and day out basis.
Absolutely. And this, by the way, this is a part of the tradition of a president's first day in office. But this day is going to be different because, remember, on President Trump's first day in office, the first time he was elected, he signed one executive order.
Well, and also
Today,
these
it's
aren't
looking like more than 100.
These aren't some marginal aspect of federal law. I mean, he is talking about signing an executive order that would end recognition for birthright citizenship, which is a protection in the United States Constitution. And to Kristen's point, no sooner will he sign it than perhaps somebody will be going shift F7 to print the lawsuit that will challenge it. And so
but it will play
that
well
out.
among-
Of course, so much of this is symbolic. He's trying to send a message.
Who's this
There's a
lady?
new
I just
sheriff in
walked
town.
back.
If you play that out, though, these lawsuits, these legal challenges, if they do make it all the way up to the Supreme Court, look at what Donald Trump has done to the Supreme Court. To my eye, I haven't seen the justices yet. We will see, of course, the Chief Justice, members of the Supreme Court, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, for example, swearing in.
For whether DEI initiatives should be different because
in the United States Constitution, and to Kristen's point, no sooner will he sign it.
Though these lawsuits, these legal challenges, if
that
they do
Rudy
make it all the way up
Ray?
to the
She
Supreme
just
Court,
tripped
look
over
at
the
what
thing
Donald
that-
Trump has done to the Supreme Court. To my eye, I haven't seen the justices yet. We will see, of course, the Chief Justice,
Project
members of the Supreme Court,
2025.
Justice Brett Kavanaugh, for example, swearing in incoming Vice President J.D. Vance. Remember, Donald Trump put 3 of those, essentially, on the Supreme Court, tilting the balance of power in that court. We have already seen rulings
So-
that are broadly seen as more favorable to the incoming
So
president
basically,
here. So when you talk
Project
about legal
2025,
challenges, that has to be a part of the
It's
conversation
like
as well.
900 some
go to
pages
NBC
of
News
like
Capitol Hill
legislation
correspondent,
from
Ryan
the
Nobles. He's
Heritage
outside of the east
Foundation,
front of the
who
Capitol.
usually like
As we see a Doug
every
And
election
Chavan's
kind
walking
of
out
they
of the,
write like
the
a
front of the
new
White House too. So
like
it looks like the tea is over
mandate
and they're
or
starting to
whatever,
depart.
like
Hey, Ryan.
for the next
Savannah
like
and Lester, and
if
yes,
the
I'm
next
standing
president is
right
Republican,
by
they
where
basically
you are
write
seeing,
the thing
folks enter
for what they need
into
to
the
do like
Capitol
in their
here
first
on the East Front.
180 days and
We've seen
so on.
3 former presidents come in
And
already.
that's actually
former
been
President
happening
Barack
for
Obama,
a lot
former President
longer
George
than
W.
just
Bush,
now.
And former President
And
Bill
a
Clinton
lot
was,
of the
course,
time,
accompanied
a
by his
lot
wife,
of their
the
plan
former
gets
Secretary of State Hillary
implemented,
Clinton,
maybe like
who lost to
more
Donald Trump in the
50%
2016
or more
election.
of
She
it.
got out of the car.
So it's not
right
like
next to
just
her.
like
I'm
you
standing,
take
looked
this
at all
whole
of us,
like
said hello, and said,
920
"It is a bright,
page book
sunny
and
day,"
you
had a
just
big
sign it
smile on
into
her
law.
face as she
You have
walked
to do
in,
like
to,
each
this,
thing has to
from
go
the East
through
Front
the
into the Capitol.
process.
Just
It's just kind
a
of
large
like
number of
what they
dignitaries that have
want
been
to
walking in over the past few
All of
minutes. You
it is
mentioned
awful,
that many of
terrible
the
stuff,
incoming cabinet
but it's not
secretaries who
as
still
simple
need to be
as
confirmed
just, oh, here's the book,
have
let me
walked in
sign
through
it,
this
it's
area.
the law
Also,
now.
a large group
So,
of those tech titans
I'm sure
all
there will be
together.
lots
Jeff
of legal
Bezos,
challenges
Elon Musk,
to
and Mark
anything
Zuckerberg all
from
walking
it
together
that he
in a
tries to
group
get
with
through.
their significant others
And
into
another
the
reason
Capitol
it will be
to be a
hard
part
for
of this event.
them to
We just saw Rudy
do that
Giuliani. We saw
is
members of the
because
Supreme
they
Court as
have
well.
such a slim
there
majority
is a
in the
large
House,
group coming into the building
Congress,
right now to be a part
and
of
in the
this. Of course,
Senate too.
it is such a
But
small
mostly in the
number of
House,
people that actually
they
get
only
to
have
be
like
inside the Capitol.
two people,
you know, for many
like
years,
majority
the
or
actual
whatever.
swearing in of the president
And
was
when
done
you
here
have
where
two
I'm
people
standing
majority,
on the
like
East
one
Front.
person could
There
be
have been
there or
55
something, or
presidents that
two
have been
people
sworn
could
in
not
at the
be
United
there,
States Capitol.
and it can mess
and
up voting
until
for anything.
1981, when Ronald
Or
Reagan moved it to the west
if
front
like
of the
one
Capitol, the other side
person
from
in
where
the
I'm
party
standing,
decides to
almost all
vote
of them
against
were
something, it can
inaugurated
derail
in
the
this
whole thing.
space. Of course,
So
there was a blizzard back in 1909
it's
when
going to be
there was an inauguration there. They were forced to move inside the Capitol, much like what we're seeing take place here. That happened in the old Senate chamber, where that inauguration took place. And then, of course, in 1985, when Ronald Reagan was dealing with cold weather, he too moved his inauguration inside in the rotunda, which is where this inauguration is going to take place today. This is only the second time that an inauguration has taken place inside the Capitol Rotunda. It is obviously a cold day in Washington. That's part of the reason that everything was moved inside. But I don't think it's nearly as cold as what we thought it was going to be. The temperatures are in the 20s. There is a bright, sunny sky. And the biggest complication probably is the wind, which kicks up from time to time. And then that sends the wind chill down, which does make it uncomfortable. But I don't think it's nearly as cold as what they were thinking. And you have to wonder whether or not this could have happened outside, given the fact that it's not as cold as they once thought. Regardless, the decision was made, and now the situation is all moved inside. And so far, it seems to be a very smooth process. Obviously, security concerns are very great right now. There is still fencing all around the Capitol complex, just an enormous law enforcement present all throughout Washington, D.C. And then while this takes place here in two separate parts of the Capitol, you have the swearing in that will take place inside the rotunda, but then there's an overflow room that takes place in Emancipation Hall, which is underground, separate from the actual Capitol building itself. And then there's also that massive event that's going to take place at Capital One Arena, where 20,000 people will sit and will watch the festivities there. And then that will take the place of the inaugural parade, of course, when all that takes place here in the next few hours. So we are now awaiting the president and the incoming president to arrive here at the Capitol. It's interesting, they will arrive by car. The first time that we saw a president arrive here by car was back in 1921. So that is obviously the tradition now, as they'll make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue here to the Capitol and then enter in the same area that we're standing right now. And then after the event takes place, after Donald Trump is sworn into office, we'll then see Joe Biden and Joe Biden leave the Capitol for the last time. And that's where we have Marine One that's parked out on the East Front right now. That will take Joe Biden to Joint Base Andrews, where he will then take the plane that looks like Air Force One. It won't be Air Force One anymore for his final trip out of Washington, where he is going to spend some time in California. So that will be a remarkable moment. That, in many ways, demonstrates that peaceful transfer of power as you see Joe Biden leave here, get on Marine One, and then head to his private life. You have to remember, of course, 4 years ago, Donald Trump did not take part in that effort. When he lost the election in 2020, he refused to take part in any of the inaugural activities, was not here for Joe Biden's swearing in. So it was then Vice President Mike Pence who left the Capitol all on his own. He left by car, and then that was where the peaceful transfer of power essentially took place. So a lot of differences with this particular inauguration on many fronts. You have the weather complications and everything else that is related to that. But so far, it seems smooth sailing as this inauguration moves forward. Savannah and Lester.
Thank you, Ryan. That sets the stage. I want to get right to our Chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, who's got some news for us this morning. Tell us, Peter, what do you got?
Savannah, learning a little more details about that first conversation between President Joe Biden and incoming President Trump as the Bidens greeted the Trumps only a short time ago outside the North Portico. Behind me, Joe Biden's message to Donald Trump was, "Welcome home." And only moments before that, before the Trumps arrived, the reporters had a chance to shout some questions, and we're just now learning some of the answers that we heard from the president. Among others, President Biden was asked if he wrote a letter to Donald Trump. He says the answer to that is yes. By tradition, that letter is often put in the top drawer of the Resolute desk. Donald Trump doing the same for Joe Biden 4 years ago. The President Biden, was also asked what he said in that letter. He said, that's between Trump and me. And then he was asked a question about what his message was on this day. He said joy, and then he said hope. There's the First Lady and the incoming First Lady, Melania Trump, who are right now entering the presidential limousine.
She doesn't have
The
eyes.
tea is over. Peter, thank you so much. The First Ladies will ride together. The President-elect and current President will ride over together by tradition, as mentioned, a tradition that was not honored 4 years ago by Donald Trump, but an extraordinarily gracious welcome by President Biden and saying, welcome home to President Trump. Kelly O'Donnell joins us. I want to bring you into this conversation. I mean, it's just, you know, it's so interesting because we have these acrimonious campaigns and certainly.
I think that after the president leaves the rotunda, at some point he'll make his way tickets to come to Washington, D.C. with the expectation that they were going to be able to bring in. There is going to be something called First Honors. It is a military ceremony that is akin to a reviewing of the troops. It's going to look like a reviewing of the troops, but it is not. It's called First Honors. We're also expecting that after the...
Yeah, she just didn't have eyes. I have big hat, no see my eyes. Oh, what's that face? What's that face? Oh, what's that face? That's the weirdest face ever. Okay, back to it.
Together in that vehicle. Over history, there have been some odd moments, which Kelly could certainly talk about. But during the Carter-Reagan transition, we're told, according to Carter's chief of staff or communications director at the time, that there was kind of a awkwardness, and that Jimmy Carter was consumed by the Iran hostage crisis. At the same time, Ronald Reagan reportedly was telling jokes about his Hollywood days. Here's former or incoming Vice President Vance now heading into the vehicle.
With Kamala Harris, whom he defeated, of course, at the top of the ticket.
And to people watching, to Kelly's point, to what Lester's talking about here, there may be, to some, a bit of a cognitive dissonance here, because it is a hard left turn from the days of the campaign. When you look at this image of these two together, the bitterest of rivals here. Remember how Democrats framed this campaign? It was as an existential threat to the foundations of democracy. They framed this as foundational. The argument goes, and I'm paraphrasing.
Well, both sides framed it as foundational.
Exactly. And the argument goes, the other side isn't just they don't just have bad ideas, they're bad people. And now here we are at this moment where Joe Biden, the outgoing president, is, as Kelly says, looking to really make the point that the institution prevails, the institution upholds, despite what we saw 4 years ago when there were some serious questions about whether that would be the case.
And when you talk about Jimmy Carter, Lester, you do, I think, raise an important point, which is how will President Biden be remembered? And here's, of course, House Speaker Mike Johnson.
It looks like it's working.
Walk in.
Just that it was disabled for copyright issues.
Something about executive orders a lot.
That was not breaking news.
This might be
Interesting to hear.
It will be a lot. How many?
But it is interesting to think about that transition between Carter and Reagan. You're right. That came after such a hard-fought battle, and the parallels are extraordinary. We just laid former President Jimmy Carter to rest, and one of the themes was that his presidency was remembered in a more favorable light than when he left office. Yes, with time. And President Biden trying to write the first draft of how his presidency will be remembered, but beset by some of the same issues: high inflation, hostages being held overseas.
And when you mention hostages, Christian, one of the key things on that inauguration day is it was an active situation.
Yes.
And Jimmy Carter was able to announce to the country at the inaugural that they had moved out of Iranian airspace. And so it was not an ordinary handing off day. He was in the middle of trying to handle a crisis. There was great friction because there was a perception that the Reagan team had had a hand in it not happening. And so what we saw unfolding with what happened with Israel and Hamas was that note of history was guiding some of the strategic and tactical decisions they made by having the two teams work together. We saw, of course, some initial hostages released. President Biden was able, in his own way, to announce that. President Trump doing his own thing, taking his own credit. So that is a guide for the kind of ways that this can happen. Also, Carter and Reagan didn't really know each other very well.
So if I like
Any
jump
Reagan
around in the
comparison
video,
that happens today
then
is a plus to Donald Trump. The first time that I worked with him on the
so
road,
like if I'm
on
just
the
watching
trail,
it live like
back
I
in
am right
2015,
now, it's fine. But
he
if I
had
like jump
placards
back
of a
like I
photo of
was, then
himself
it's copyright.
with Ronald Reagan. He wanted that at the
I guess
earliest
that
moment to
kinda
be
makes sense.
a comparison for Republicans.
But kinda
Now, that's
not
a long,
copyright laws are
that's
just
a decade
stupid.
ago and a lot of miles ago. But these comparisons today to
It looks like
Reagan
my head
having
is on
his
fire,
ceremony inside, these two men had a lot of the showman parts of the presidency in common, although politically quite different. Ronald Reagan would not be in the MAGA camp, the Reagan we knew then. So threads of those other presidents do cast a shadow on a day like this.
This moment here will certainly emphasize the idea of unity. This is our first opportunity to see a unifying moment here during this transition today. But you have to wonder, going back to the Republican convention, remember there was talk about unity, and then before long in the Trump speech, he was beginning to fall into his rally type presentation.
All three of us have covered this incoming president and outgoing president for many, many years. And one of the themes in my time at the White House was that you'd often hear from aides and advisors that the president may strike Donald Trump being a certain tone, right? A tone that is unifying. After his assassination attempt, which remember came just days before that speech at the Republican National Convention this summer, the difference was that Donald Trump himself said publicly that he felt like he had been changed, that he wanted to deliver a speech that would bring both sides together. The speech that we saw that week was not that. So the White House says, and incoming administration officials say, and I was told this will be a speech today that is about restoring and renewing confidence.
Here come the presidents.
All of that. Just like,
Reporters trying their level best to throw a couple questions in the direction of the incoming president and the outgoing president, but no dice, not this
My
morning.
guess is they'll have a lot to talk about. And it's a short ride.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall inside that.
Well,
vehicle.
remember, we just saw at the Carter funeral, it was President Obama, but and Trump were quite chatty. So they have, it's not a long ride, it's a 5-6 minute ride, but it sounds like, based on Peter's reporting, that has been a warm embrace and exchange this morning in reverence of the office and tradition. And now they'll, as tradition has it, ride in this motorcade, the short drive to the Capitol, where the swearing in will start to be underway.
Joe Biden has talked about recently about whether he thinks he could have beaten Donald Trump in the election. He thinks maybe he still believes he could have. And you have to wonder what's going through his mind at this
But
point.
he also says in the next breath, when asked if he could have the vigor to serve for 4 more years, that he didn't know. And you get the sense.
He said it more colorfully than that. He said, "Who the hell knows?"
You get the sense watching him here. This is not, and I think you know this. This is not a person who wants to be leaving the White House. He wanted 4 more years. He did, and his wife, the First Lady, wanted 4 more years, as she has talked about. She believed that her husband could do it. She's been one of his staunchest defenders all along, which is why the dynamics with Joe Biden are fascinating here.
And Kelly might get to pull rank as the longest serving, having covered Capitol Hill and Joe Biden for the longest. And I think you would agree that he had wanted to be president for pretty much the entirety of his 50-year career in public service.
And once you attain that office, it's hard to leave it. It's hard to ever see yourself as not being capable of continuing. And I think that has influenced a lot of what we've seen publicly, that his own belief, whether polling or the views of the country support that or not. He will always be the 46th president of the United States, and so that he hangs on to.
And we will miss him.
Donald Trump
We
is
will
also someone who
definitely
has a hospitality business, so he has no trouble making small talk and no trouble going through these ceremonies. He's quite at ease.
And Joe Biden likes to tell a story as well.
Oh, indeed he does.
I do think that his decision, the timing of when he decided to pass the baton to Vice President Kamala Harris, will be a part of his legacy. It will be a part of how history grapples with how Joe Biden is remembered. He promised, he campaigned on being a transitional president, and when that moment came, bolstered by big wins in the primaries, he did not pass the baton.
Well, that's one thing we haven't really focused as much on, which is what do the Democrats do now? We just saw the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, entering in to the Capitol. But this is a moment in a time of soul searching for Democrats. At the first Trump administration, there was a lot of talk about the hashtag resistance, and you just don't see that same emphasis so far. What are you hearing, Kristen, about the strategy on the part of Democrats who were handed a resounding defeat at the polls?
It's a very different strategy, Savannah, for that reason. The signals, I interviewed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries just this weekend. He said they are going to be looking for common ground with President-elect Donald Trump, particularly on issues that relate to the economy, to lowering prices. At the same time, he said we're not going to shy away from disagreeing when they are in a moment of soul searching. Remember, after former President Obama won his second term, Republicans were in the wilderness. And from that wilderness rose Donald Trump. So you are absolutely right to be focused on the Democrats right now as well, because politically speaking, what we are about to witness over these next 4 years will be some type of, and we'll have to see where it ends, a new leadership. No one can answer that question. Who's the leader of the Democratic Party?
Let me just point out this picture as the outgoing and incoming presidents make their way to the Capitol Hill. There are people along this route here. You'll see in the
like based on Peter's reporting that has been a warm
in this area that was going to be part of the parade later on. They still have the barricades up. We've seen a lot of people here in Washington, D.C. Who walking around who don't appear to have appointments or things that they necessarily signed up for, but those who are lucky enough to be along this path might catch a glimpse.
It's supposed to be a parade route that's much different than what was expected, but we've got a few diehards who decided, we'll bundle up with the hand warmers on and get a glimpse.
You can hear some of the cheers as they go by.
To this point about what Democrats do next and what this looks like here in a Trump administration, where, as you have noted throughout the morning, throughout the day, Savannah, the Republicans control the levers of power in that branch. Remember that Republicans have the narrowest House majority in modern political history, right? They don't have They don't have 60 million seats to deal with here, right? And when you look at some of the numbers here, there are 3 Republicans in districts won by Democrats in the election, 4 times as many Democrats in districts won by Donald Trump, which is to say that there is in some ways for some of these Democrats an incentive to try to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans here. You're already seeing it from, for example, Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman, who has already said he would back at least some of the incoming president's cabinet picks, like incoming potential Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And so I think the dynamic is going to be really interesting given these close margins. Speaker Johnson doesn't have a whole lot of extra Republicans, so to speak.
They has a 1 seat.
They can't pass the legislation without Democrats in many instances.
But it's interesting because it's taking a step back. I mean, it is worth noting that right now, as soon as this swearing in takes place, Donald Trump, the Republicans will have the White House, both houses of Congress, as we've observed before. He also has a conservative ideological majority on the Supreme Court. So it's a Republican-controlled Washington right now. But American voters also tend to keep their elected officials on a very tight leash. And in the midterms, how many times, Kelly, as Capitol Hill correspondent, you would see that at the midterms, you see the House that controls, the party that controls the White House lose seats. So everyone knows in Washington, they're on a tight leash and a short clock, and that's why you see that urgency.
The midterms always feel so close at this particular moment. You're inaugurating a president at the same time the midterms are hovering so.
And whatever honeymoon Donald Trump has in this moment, it is with the knowledge that the clock is ticking. He only has 1 term. He has less than a term based on what you just described. And if he is going to accomplish all the things he said, he's got to act quickly. And he's got to do it when he has the level of control and influence on other Republicans and to some degree on Democrats, because winning every battleground state and the popular vote does send a message.
Where will Democrats dig in?
Certainly, it will be some of the issues that relate to unwinding programs that certainly existed during the Biden time, but also challenges to their core constituencies. They would want to see things like protections for workers and the environment. Those would be key areas. Concerns about the negative effects that could come from the immigration policies of President Trump. There will be many who say securing the border is a needed priority, but what are the unforeseen problems that result from that?
Democrats hoping and thinking that there will be an overreach, that this notion of a mandate that perhaps Donald Trump will take too far? Is that kind of the strategy?
Absolutely, particularly on the border, I would say. That's an area where you could see some robust debate and oversight. Don't forget oversight. I think that's going to be significant as well. It's worth thinking about in this moment the agenda of President-elect Trump. He wants to do something big on the border. He wants to do something big on taxes. I won't get into the process, I promise you that. But
You've got 4 years to talk about it on Meet the Press.
But how does he get it done? And that's when we look at Speaker Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who you spoke to earlier today, Savannah. They become so significant. How do these men work together?
Well, this is an incredible shot, this motorcade, and we have the advantage of a camera and a truck watching the whole thing. There's these wheels rolling, and they're just a few moments away now from the Capitol, and the swearing-in ceremony will get underway in earnest. I want to go to Craig Melvin, my colleague who's over at Emancipation Hall. This is a first for this venue for inauguration, and it's by necessity. The cold, of course, having moved everything indoors, and that makes this the overflow room. So, Craig, as we watch these images, is it still that party atmosphere that you were describing earlier?
Oh, very much so indeed, Savannah. Moments away from, again, to your point, that caravan arriving here at the Capitol. Just to give you a sense of where we are and what we can expect. We're talking about 2,600 people. That's it. That's the number of people who are going to be able to watch President Trump be sworn in here just moments from now. You're going to have roughly 800 there in the rotunda. You'll have another 1,300 underground where we are in Emancipation Hall, and then roughly 500 more next door in this theater here at the Capitol Visitor Center. Upstairs in the rotunda, think of that as sort of the adult table at Thanksgiving, where we are down below. Sort of, it's like the kids' table to a certain extent. Upstairs, you've got elected members of Congress, you've got members of the military, you've got congressional leadership. Down here, it's like a Star Wars bar to a certain extent. In the last few minutes, I've seen Jake Paul, his brother Logan Paul, pro wrestler, pro boxer. We've seen New York City Mayor Eric Adams as well. He's down here. So is Matt Schlapp, the former White House political director. The Commandant of the Marine Corps also here as well, a man named Eric Smith. So they are still milling about here. They're about to start taking their seats. They have been watching the same images that we're seeing right now. They're watching them unfold on two giant jumbotrons here in Emancipation Hall as well.
All right, Craig, thank you. I want to go back to Ryan Nobles. He's outside the east front of the Capitol where the arrival is taking place. Ryan?
Yeah, that's right, Lester. Yep, we just saw the motorcade pull up here on the east front, and we're now watching as the two presidents start to exit the presidential vehicles, and they'll walk into the Capitol. There's an enormous security presence around them. Probably about 10 or 12 vehicles accompany them up the Capitol Hill to the Capitol, where they will walk into the building now. We can see Jill Biden being escorted out from her car. And this will begin the process in earnest. We can see Melania Trump being escorted in as well. It looks as though the two presidents, they're actually underneath the carriage entrance, which is the way that you get into the Senate side of the Capitol. It looks as though the presidential limousine, known colloquially as the Beast, is parked inside that carriage entrance. So they're not out in the opening here on the east front where I'm standing. They'll come in there through the carriage entrance into the first floor of the Capitol and then make their way up into the rotunda. So we actually can't see a glimpse of them getting out of the presidential limousine at the moment. Now, yeah, we can see them now walking into the Capitol from the carriage entrance here. Those are the two Sergeant-at-Arms, the Senate and the House Sergeant-at-Arms, who are escorting them. You see Amy Klobuchar, who is the chair of the Rules Committee of the Senate. She and her committee were in charge of all the inaugural festivities and the planning of this massive event. They were also responsible for the quick adjustment in order to do everything inside Trailing the two presidents, you see, of course, the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Also, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. And they will now make their way up to the rotunda. From where they are right now on the first floor of the Capitol, they'll have to go up one flight of stairs, and then it is probably about a 3-minute walk to get into the rotunda for this event. So pretty seamless.
Elon Musk.
Yep, Elon Musk there. We saw him come in with a number of the tech executives. So they are safely inside the Capitol, Lester, preparing for the next stage of this swearing-in process.
And we just saw Melania Trump enter as well, so we're getting close to the moment, the inaugural. There's Doug Emhoff, the outgoing second gentleman, and we'll continue to watch these arrivals. I want to go to Garrett Haake, also on Capitol Hill for us, with some news this morning about Vivek Ramaswamy, who we just saw mentioned that he's indicated. There's J.D. Vance, our incoming vice president, and his wife, Usha Vance. But anyway, Garrett, you have some information about Vivek Ramaswamy and his plans.
Yeah, Savannah, Vivek Ramaswamy has an interesting distinction here as someone who will be departing an administration and a post that didn't actually exist yet before he departs it. We have now reporting from two sources familiar with his plans that Vivek Ramaswamy, who was set to be the co-leader of DOGE, this new Department of Government Efficiency that the Trump administration is expected to set up in the coming hours, will in fact not be really taking on that role. He's instead going to run for
Tear up your car insurance bill and try this instead. I used to let them raise my car insurance every year until I found this huge loophole that